Okay, so the next passage is going to be a poem. It has a title. It's called Slanted Figures. And we're going to use that as a hint. We need to kind of figure out why it was named this. Okay, so let's just jump into it. So actually, before we do that, be clear, it's separated by stanzas, right? And we consider those as like poetic paragraphs. And the line numbers are still the same. The test used 5, 10, 15, 20, which means we have before line number 1, 2, 3, 4, and then this is 6 and 7 and so on. All right, so that's just standard fare, if you will. We still want to try to take things a paragraph at a time, again, a stanza at a time. This has some unique aspects about that because at line 20, the stanza breaks in the middle of the sentence to the next one. So we'll talk about that as we get into it. And then, as we know, poems have additional constraints on them that usually other forms of writing don't. For instance, it may contain a lot of rhyming. It may contain onomatopoeia, which means a word like moo or ba or something like that. Or it might create a lot of alliterations where words begin with the same symbols. It is vivid language usually in a very figurative way. So the imagery involved in it can get esoteric and deep and complicated, right? So there's all these things that are going on. There's normally something symbolic underneath it all. Common symbolisms are love, death, the circle of life, the seasons, things that come to fruition and maybe repeat themselves. And it could be about, the journey of life, if you will. Not only the circle of life, but the journey, starting off and becoming a person of the world, so to speak, and so on, and things like that. It uses hyperbole, it uses metaphors, it uses similes, more than other stuff does. What I often find surprising is the number of metaphors and similes and non-poems that happen as well. So a lot of this kind of you're used to doing. There is another level of abstraction on top of most poems. A poem can be straightforward. Normally there's something hidden underneath, which is why we're talking about the literal interpretation of something and the metaphorical or figurative interpretation of it as well as stuff. Again, a lot of different writing can use personification. Poems use personification a lot as well. It's not the only one. And there's just a lot of stuff of that. So I kind of covered it really quickly. I'm not going to go in depth about how rhyming patterns work and different forms of poems like a haiku, and some are short, some are long, some need to be split. There's also the physical structure of a poem. I know there was a poem I read about waves and snakes, and the poem was actually written in the shape of that, or another one where the poem was written where each part actually had that physical pattern of the thing that was being written about. So sometimes we can use that to our advantage. One of the oddities too with a poem, on top of the figurative language, is that sentences are normally not split properly. So I'll talk about that as we read here, because I think it depends on the author and things like that as well. So again, coming full circle, we have this thing called slanted figures. So let's go through a code. The slanted figures pushing west on Madison were leaning against air. So as I read, I question myself and I stop momentarily, and I might be, what is Madison? Is this about New York City? Are they talking about Madison Avenue? It doesn't sound like they're talking about a city named Madison. And then I'm still left to say, wait, they use slanted figures. It's the same as the title. The slanted figures pushing west were leaning against air. So there's something free, if you will. It's not strapped down. So I'm not really sure. They use figures. I don't know if they're talking about a person here or something else. So we kind of need to evolve through the story that the author is presenting to us and seeing what it was. So it says, the wind, my mother said, is terrible. her voice breaking inside that word. So if you notice, the author split that across multiple paragraphs, including the use of commas. There's little tiny phrases being split here. So, and again, the wind. So the wind seems to be something going on here. Is that important? Is that why the figures were leaning against the air? But let's try to see if we could figure that out. Okay, these are questions you want to stop momentarily for and ask yourself to see if the poem is making sense, or even if it's a non-poem, you want to make sure, and you want to try to capture the main idea, or at least the topic, and some of the summary information about what's going on in each paragraph, in this case, the stanzas. So I was 5. So apparently the narrator is a 5-year-old child. Okay, so we've identified who's writing this. Marshall Field's department store was lost behind us. Now, that doesn't mean the building itself was missing. It just means it seems they left it, or they at least walked past it, and it was behind us. The wind, so wind is being talked about again, had needle teeth. The big flat hands were in my jacket and my pants that I cried out. So it turns out there's a lot we can think and say right here about this. So first of all, the wind comes up again. So this seems to be a running theme, at least for the first stanza, right? We know this is a young child, okay? The child using personification here. The wind had big flat hands that were in my jacket and my pants. So basically the interpretation to get out of this, it was pretty windy and probably cold as well. Now, we don't know if it's the summer or anything, so it's kind of hard to say that it was winter, but the child ends up saying, "Did I cry out?" Now, that probably means it was the winter, because if it was super cold, imagine the winter kind of ripping through your clothes, where your coat doesn't really matter. It's that cold because it's that windy. The cold and the wind is kind of just permuting through you, all right? That said, there's something interesting to say here as well. So imagine there's a 5-year-old kid who's freezing cold in the wind, and they don't complain, they don't cry. Okay, so that seems to be odd. Okay, and we also know the other character in the story is the kid's mother. So they seem to be walking somewhere away from this department store. Probably they just went there and they bought something from there. Okay, so we don't know. There's lots of oddities here, but the author is repeating the windiness multiple times, and not only using the word wind literally, but the actual figurative aspect where it's personified as if the wind is inside the kid's coat. All right. So she led me to a stone wall spinning door. What on earth is that? Is this kid's imagination going wild? Is this imagery? Or is it imagination? Okay, that is an important thing here. And then up onto a sidewalk in the air. So again, is this just the kid's imagination going wild? And a protected crossing between office buildings. Suits and dresses stared at us. So again, let's stop here. Let's kind of really figure out what's going on here. Is this just the kid being a little kid with a wild imagination, or is there something more to this? And in specific, since this is a poem, is this literal or is it figurative? Okay, so she led me to a stone wall spinning door. Does anybody know what a spinning door is? That's maybe, something to figure out here. So it turns out many of you know about a revolving door. You go in, you push it, and it spins around, and you come out the other side, right? So that turns out, it's not the kid imagining. And then what's the stone wall? What do you mean a stone wall spinning door? Right? Remember, this is a little kid who doesn't particularly have the words. Obviously, they're writing this as an adult. But at least if we get into the mental space of thinking like a 5-year-old, what could the stone wall be? Okay, it turns out it's an office building, right? They even tell us here eventually. In fact, they give us a few answers here, the author does, by doing that kind of a thing. So for the kid, it's just this big, giant brick building. It sounds like it's probably larger than normal. It's probably not a 2-story brick building. It's probably might even be a skyscraper, especially if it's in Manhattan, let's say, because again, that Madison, we never figured out what Madison was referring to there. Okay, and then it says up into a sidewalk in the air. So what is that? All right, so they go into this office building, and it turns out that is going to be basically two buildings next to each other with a walkway across it. In fact, it's odd because a lot of students can't figure out what that means. It's actually defined right here. It says it's a protected crossing between two buildings. It's defining what the sidewalk in the air is. So it's a little bridge between two buildings. Hospitals have these. Some schools have them, especially colleges. Hotels have them. Things like that. A theme park may have that, stuff like that. So you've seen this, a few of these in Manhattan. I'm not familiar if there's any there might be Queens, maybe in the York College campus and things like that. So that's what they're talking about. We're all familiar with this. We've seen it. And usually you might go across a street, a highway, so that way you're not need to cross the street and risk getting hit by a car or something like that. But not always. All right. So that defines what's going on there. And then it says suits and dresses stared at us. So first of all, we need to understand what it means, and then why did they stare at them? So obviously pieces of clothing didn't literally stare at the mother and the kid. All right, so there's a lot we can discuss here. Why were they being stared at is one of the questions. So there's kind of a few answers to that. And the other is, what do they mean suit and dresses did it? So really the answer to that is we have to realize they ended up it was probably so cold that the mother figured out a shortcut. So they went into the office building, went across the enclosed little bridge thing to the other building and got to the other side, wherever the so-called other side was. Okay? So they're in an office building. They're probably just dressed in normal clothes, normal street clothes. So a lot of people are like, they're dressed poorly or something, as poor people. It doesn't mean they're low income or something like that. It just means they're in regular street clothes, whereas the office people are probably in so-called business attire, right? They're probably in suits and dresses and with ties and, better shoes, not sneakers and stuff like that, where the mother and the kid are just dressed for normal attire, if you will. So first of all, there's that, which is they're different. They don't belong in the office building, so to speak. Now, there might be a common area where they're just walking through the hallway. I doubt they literally walk through offices, but they're in an office building, which mainly has office workers, right? So they became an oddity, if you will. And if the kid was cute or something, everybody, look at the cute kid walking through the hallway or something like that. So they weren't being looked at as looked down upon. Although the word stare has an intensity to it. It just means it was kind of a novelty that day. There was this mom and her kid walking through. They probably had shopping bags, and everybody thought it was a sweet thing or something like that. So that's really what's going on there. And they're just walking through. That's what's happening. And then the mother says, "We saved 2 blocks," she whispered. All right, so there's something happening here too. And I'll change the color of this for a second. Well, we're getting what the mother is saying. Wait a second, it's not letting me do that. There we go. Up here, we have the mother said. Okay, and now down here, we have the mother whispered. So it seems to me that the mother is narrating things to the child. And that may or may not relate to why when it said, the kid says, "Did I cry out?" The kid is probably comfortable and trusting the mother to make sure they're both safe and giving a loving, caring situation. Because you could flip this and say, why on earth is the mother dragging this kid through wherever they are on this cold day? That never really gets resolved in the poem per se. But there's an issue here where the boy seems to be getting the support from the mother, so the boy's not freaking out. Right? So there's things like that's happening. So she tells him, "We saved 2 blocks." as she took the escalator down. So basically, they go through the revolving door, they go up to one, they go across, and they come down an escalator. So they're basically somewhere, and she tells them, "We saved 2 blocks." And she tells them this calmly, right? She doesn't scream it, or or she. And by the way, we have no sense that the mother's even cold at this point. Hey, sweetie, we saved 2 blocks. Yeah, right. And then we had to cross the Chicago River. All right, so here we have another physical context. We had Madison up here. All right, so Madison seems to be in Chicago. It seems to me if the Chicago River they're probably in Chicago. Okay, as you guys probably know, they're not in Manhattan or one of the 5 boroughs. They're not in Brooklyn, Queens, Staten Island, or the Bronx. So, and then it says the Madison Street Bridge. So now we know that Madison was probably Madison Street. Right, it's the same here. We don't always use Avenue or Street. Go 2 blocks should be at 7th. We don't say 7th Avenue or 7th Street or whatever. And it could be ambiguous sometimes, but that's how it goes. So we definitely have a context here that they're in Chicago. All right. Now it's interesting because she tells the kid, and again, my mother said. So now we have a third thing where the mother is basically calmly telling the kid something. Some years, they ran ropes down the stairs of these buildings to keep people from blowing away. Whoa, bro. Like, I wouldn't want my mother to tell me that as a 5-year-old as I'm going down their stairways or whatever. So we have kind of this duality happening where the mother seems to be self-assuring, but the scenarios they're in are not the most comfortable scenarios. And just to kind of hit home further on that, the boy now personifies the river. The river was slush but green and thick. It's ice mouth whispering, right? Be careful, little boy. Right? We even get kind of one of those. We can put voices to this, right? And the river licked at what we walked on. All right, so we can kind of stop there and do another analysis here where, okay, it's freezing cold. They went down the stairway where it's so windy sometimes that people blow off and they put a rope to hold on to, right? The kid is still not freaking out after this, okay? And then they basically give it this kind of greenness. A monster is green, that kind of a thing. It has not only did it whisper something to the boy, which, by the way, the mother is whispering too, right? So it's interesting that the author gets that parallel there. That, like, well, if the mother's calm and good, the river's going to be nice. Be careful, little boy. You're going to fall and break your head, right? That kind of a thing. So where the mother might be calming, the river might be like, what the heck, right? So an ice mouth, right? Ice mouth. Nasty river, right? And it licked what they walked upon. What does that mean, right? So again, you guys should be pausing this as I ask these questions. But really, it's the sidewalk, and it's lapping up onto the sidewalk and probably freezing up. So that also implies you could slip on the sidewalk and fall into the river as well. I would hope they have barricades or something up, but there's all this kind of stuff going on. All right, so that is our analysis. So clearly, they seem to be in the center of Chicago. The city proper is what it's normally called. And it's clear that it's a freezing day. And by the way, you're not supposed to use external information. So Chicago is known as the Windy City. Just like New York is the Big Apple, Chicago is the Windy City. So if you happen to know that, use that to your advantage. Don't get too gung-ho about it, because you're only supposed to answer questions based on what the author told us. So it might turn out the author recharacterizes Chicago in some other way. So don't get too involved with things you know. This can get bad or uncomfortable, or whatever the word is, on science passages and things like that, where sometimes you know more than the person is writing about, and you can't go by your knowledge. You have to go by what the author says. So the author can say wrong stuff. If the author says the moon is made of green cheese, then you have to take that as a fact from the story, unless the author corrects himself later on. All right, so don't use your pre-notions and pre-information about something to guide your way. But make it available if you need to. All right. So, and then here where the 20, this is where the author swaps there. So the author not only continues the sentence on the next line, but it skips to the next stanza. Okay. The wind was in my shoes. Okay. So we have that repetition one more time. So let me change the color to fuchsia. I don't know why it's not letting me change the color. So we have that the wind was here, okay, and then the author, and if you notice, it's at the end of the stanza, and the author is basically creating a segue into the next stanza from 2 to 3, right? This is the first stanza, that's the second, that's the third, okay? And by the way, this thing where notions are skipped in a poem is called enjambment. That's used for multiple different reasons. Most people believe it's used to confuse us. In kind of a way it is. The author is leading us along this metaphor or whatever it happens to be. And the author is kind of forcing us to interpret it. So what I like to do is read the lines the way the author gave us gave the sentences to us. And basically we have a knack of kind of stopping at the end of every line on a poem because there is interpretations we get out of that. At the same time, what I like to do is read a whole sentence, no matter how the author terminates each line. That becomes a nuisance because not only is there kind of a double meaning sometimes, but the author is not always writing grammatically correct. So we have to be careful with that. But anyway, this sentence starts with this the, and it ends all the way down here at station, okay? So the wind was in my shoes again, all right? And the boy's still not complaining, all right? The wind was in the kid's shoes because it's just so freezing out and windy. And then there's another kind of thing here. The boy doesn't say, I held my mother's hand. It says, my mitten held my mother's glove. So it was kind of so cold that the glove and the mitten kind of solidified together as a unit, okay? And that held me onto the earth and knew the way to the station. So again, Chicago. So we're not sure. We're definitely at Chicago, okay? And we're at, it sounds like a more of a main train station, okay? Maybe compared to like Grand Central, Penn Station, those kind of stations, or a Long Island Railroad station, kind of analogous to what we have here. Yeah. And by the way, in Chicago, so in New York City, we have subways, and we also have above ground. That's called L's, E-L. Chicago is mainly just L's. That, again, is extra knowledge. You don't particularly need to know that, but it can kind of help us maybe understand it more. Okay, so they basically had to walk to the train station at that point in the freezing cold, and kind of was so cold that the boy is kind of metaphorically saying, like, he stuck to his mother through his glove and his mitten or whatever, right? So they finally get to the train station. Our feet were stumped, she said inside. So finally, the mother says something kind of negative, okay? Inside as the train jerks. So not only inside the station, they're all finally on a train, all right? So they seem to be leaving the city, all right? So again, what we kind of have up to here so far is it's windy, right? It's cold. They apparently went shopping. We don't know that yet specifically. All we know is that we left this Marshall's Field store because it doesn't say they had heavy bags or anything like that. And they meandered through the city a bit to finally get to the station, and they're on the train. So the train jerked, groaned, and rolled. A lot of students kind of get bent out of shape about this. Isn't that what trains do? Okay? And again, they're even personifying the train here slightly with the word groaned. Trains do jerk around. They do roll around. They're bumpy. They're dark. They're noisy. And again, into darkness. Smoke and sparks. the conductor called out he's pausing in the dark. All right, so that's a weird sentence. It seems to encompass a lot all simultaneously. So let's try to rip that apart slightly as well and see if we can get all the different pieces out of it. The thing here with into darkness, okay, there's two interpretations of that. One interpretation would be they're going into a tunnel, okay? The other is that it got dark out. They're above ground in an above ground train, and it got dark out. Okay, so maybe they went shopping, and then at some point it got dark and they went home. So that seems to make sense. That could flow. Smoke and sparks. That sounds a little spooky and scary and weirdish, but this is what trains do anyway, especially if it's a diesel engine. That might be what they're talking about. And who doesn't see the sparks along as the wheels run along the track and the electricity part and all that stuff. So that is all normal. You could take this in a negative fashion and project your own thoughts onto it. That, oh my God, the kid took this horrible, almost a scary amusement park ride. But that is not what's happening here. It's just the way a regular train works. Okay. The conductor called out he's pausing in the dark. So what does that mean? The conductor called out he's pausing in the dark. It just basically means the conductor called out every station they came to, and it was dark out, so the conductor did it in the dark. Or they entered a tunnel, right? So we still kind of need to figure that out. We don't know really what the darkness part is about. And then the kid says, I counted us home. Okay. So we can get a little context here about that, where, again, it's a 5-year-old. A lot of 5-year-olds can't count. Let's say their journey home was 100 train stops. A lot of 5-year-olds can count, but a lot of 5-year-olds can. So now the question is, would a 5-year-old count 100 stops? Most likely not. They would get bored or something, especially if the kid was tired. They were in the city proper and they're going somewhere else now at this point. It's probably safe to say that they were less than 20 stops home. Now, depending on what train they're at, talking about the New York City subway, 20 stops could be, going 2 miles. But if it's something like the Long Island Railroad, 20 stops could be going 50 miles or something. So anyway, they counted us home. So I'm assuming they took maybe 5 to 15 stops home, and the kid, the kid was maybe even familiar with them. So counting does mean the kid went 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but the kid may have actually known the stops as well. I don't know if we can really infer that out of this. And then the kid says Chicago's northest and still unshoveled corner. So it seems to me that they left the Chicago city proper. They took a train somewhere. So, and they're at, I'm going to just put unshoveled corner. They ended up at that unshoveled corner. Okay. Our snow was clean. So we have a compare and a contrast happening now with these two sentences. Why was it unshoveled when they got off the train? And why was their snow clean? All right, you can run parallels to this with your experience in New York City. Usually Manhattan is the first place that's plowed. And the more further away you get from Manhattan, things are either not plowed or you get into maybe not the city proper, but more suburbs. So I'm just going to put SB here. You're kind of getting more urban, if you will, not city, right? So kind of they're leaving the city, going to less city stuff. Now, this can kind of be hard because if you put it in the context of New York City, if we leave Manhattan and you go to Brooklyn, Brooklyn's pretty still city-ish, right? But there's parts of Brooklyn that are not. And if we go to Queens, right, if we have Manhattan here and Long Island is here, the end of Long Island is Brooklyn and Queens is right next to it here. So the outskirts really where Queens meets Nassau County, right, could be kind of far away, including on a train. And you might have to take a few trains and your buses to get somewhere where this line is. So, did they just live, let's say, the outskirts of Queens, the similar kind of thing? Or were they actually formerly in Long Island where they would not only taken New York City transit, but they would have taken along a railroad, and they're all the way out here, right? Where again, between two stops might be 10 miles or something. That kind of never quite gets resolved here, but we can safely assume that they do leave the city proper. All right, so that could be key to some of what's happening here. And so that's the reason why they may see an unshoveled corner, and the reason why their snow was clean, because it's less traffic, less people. The city hasn't cleaned it yet, all those kind of things like that. So, and then our house, it's stucco white and tight. So stucco is a kind of concrete that is put over a brick building. It's just a way of the outside of the building. So instead of it being like a wooden structure, it probably was made of concrete in some sort. Could be bricks, but the bricks were still covered over. Okay, opened. So they finally got in their house. A house opened. So it's written in a weird style. Did they go to the door and open it with the key? Or obviously the door wasn't open if it was obviously in the winter now, because now not only is it cold and we had their experience, but we know it snowed as well, right? So it's clear that this happened in the wintertime. It wasn't the summer. Earlier, we weren't quite sure. So they finally get in the house. And from behind our kitchen window, we saw other trains, lights sliding past, the city exhaling clouds of people into icy air. So again, the author is using personification to communicate something to us. So they're in their house finally. They're probably nice and warm. It says the kitchen, but like my mental image is like they're in front of a fireplace, even if they don't have one. They probably have coffee and hot cocoa warming up their hands kind of scenario. And I don't know if the window they're talking about is being used as a metaphor or not. I think kind of it is. But basically, they're seeing more trains still coming, and the city is exhaling people into the icy air. What is that talking about? Right? That can be a challenge to figure out really what the author is trying to tell us and communicate to us about what is happening in the story here, and especially if we come full circle. Really, the resolution to that is that it was the winter. Okay, so maybe they went to that department store. We don't know, to go shopping. So let's say they left in the morning or at noon. They go to the Marshall's department store. They get what they need to get. It's the winter, so Chicago, it's probably getting dark at 4 or 5 o'clock at that point, right? So that's the darkness that's relating to the train too, I think, where it wasn't dark because they were in a tunnel, or it was dark where it was the middle of the night. It was just dark because it get dark in the wintertime, and there was a snowstorm going on, or one that just had happened, right? So so they're seeing that, right? And then, because the whole train explanation does have an odd way that the author's telling us about it. You know, it jerked, it groaned, it whatever. But you have to realize the train is also in the coldness and the wind and the storm, right? And then we realized they went home. I guess the mother chose to bring the kid home before it got too dark. And that makes practical sense. So again, we have this running thing about the mother caring for the kid. We still have the concern, why did the mother bring the kid out at all? I don't know. That is never answered here. All right. About this thing, the city exhaling people, clouds of people. What is going on there? Okay, to me, it seems to me that happens, that they left, they finally get home, right? But the office workers, all the people in the city proper, they still need to get home after work. So whereas they have left at 3:30 and got home at 5:30 or something, these people are maybe leaving at 5, 6, 7 and getting home later. They still, and that's the city exhaling them, right? The Chicago proper, they're coming to their houses, and obviously in his neighborhood to the suburbs. Now everybody's not going to the suburbs, but at least he did. And again, we don't know exactly for sure if they live in the suburbs, but they don't live in the middle of the city proper. We know that for sure. To make it contextually make sense, is this does not sound like somebody who went to Midtown Manhattan and then went to Lower Manhattan, right? It just doesn't sound that way. All right, so the journey was further. It was the analogous might be they went from from Manhattan to Queens, the limits of Queens, or from Manhattan to Long Island, even Manhattan to New Jersey, right? It never mentions that, so that's the kind of the context here. And then the mother ends up by saying, "It's terrible out there." My mother said, I just won't thaw. So we know we have a context here that the mother is still freezing, and finally the mother says something, right? So that is interesting there. All right, so that is kind of the run through of this. So if we come back to the question of what the title was about, because it was windy and a storm, it seems clear that the figures were people pushing themselves forward so they didn't get knocked over by the wind. It wasn't talking about a street sign or one of those funny, weird-looking things that are gas at car companies, that tall thing that waves in the wind or something. That's not the figure it's talking about. And it was windy on Madison Street in the middle of Chicago is really what they're talking about. So that's where it's coming from. And if we think about that as a theme or something, yeah, it was cold and basically windy, and they're spending the whole time trying to get home through this journey. And the slanted figures, if you will, represents that whole situation. All right, so that's the run through of that, and that's our story. So basically, we have two main characters. We have the mother and the child, and almost the wind is the third character, or the cold is the third character, right? And we have a bunch of things got personified. The train got personified. The river got personified. I think there was a third thing that got personified. Yeah, the city exhaling people out. So the author is using a lot of different stuff here. I didn't look to see if there was a simile. There probably is one or two stuck in here. And obviously the whole thing is metaphorical, anecdotal as well, right? So, and the author is using the structure. The author did use structure, and the author bit it off in pieces. We had the stanza 1, stanza 2, and that connection where I like where the author segued and gapped that sentence between the two things here. That was kind of important to do. If we talk in terms of the tone of the passage, it's not a sad passage. It's not particularly happy. I think the right way to say it was cold and it was windy. And again, the boy doesn't complain, so there's no particular negativity to it. Although it's the mother who at the very end says, she says we need to thaw still. We're still frozen. So not said as a complaint. I saw they're happy to be home, and they're in the comfort of the warmth of whatever, radiator, fireplace, heater, whatever they have. It didn't get too deep into that. So this poem didn't really use rhyming too much, I can see. It did use the enjambment a lot here, though. Even if we kind of go from here, that goes through here. The author split, I was 5, then the next thing here. So there's a lot of this splitting apart and taking little phraseology perspective here that the author took here. Personification was big, structure was big, and just trying to rip apart that figurative kind of aspect to it. Okay? There was no real rhythm to this, if you will. It kind of had a running theme, if you will, but it wasn't, a poem where roses are red, violets are blue, that kind of a thing. So there was no cadence to it, those kind of things like that. All right. So, all right. I'm going to end this here, and then we're going to do a second part with the questions, just so I don't have to repeat this whole thing, just in case the video failed. So I'll be back in a second. All right, we're going to continue now with the answers. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the answers to the bottom of the screen here. The questions, rather, sorry. And we're going to go through it that way. All right. So I'm going to have to go a little slow with this per se, just to make sure I can get all this lined up properly. So the first question is question number 8. Just to make sure that's showing on the screen properly. Let me bring that up to say there. Yeah, we got the choices on that now. All right, so okay. The people in stanza 1 are slanted figures. So we talked about that because they are leaning into what? All right. So a snowstorm. Yeah, we talked about it's certainly windy and there's a snowstorm. So that seems like a viable choice. Okay. Other people. They could be, but that seems to be pushing it a little. Whatever. And in fact, we know it's not that because it says they were leaning against air. So if it was other people, they would be leaning against other people. Okay. A strong wind. Yeah. I like that even better than A, right? So because the snowstorm could just be coming straight down and not particularly windy, even though wind comes with the snowstorm. So that is our tiebreaker there. That's how we can get rid of A. The cold. I guess philosophically / metaphorically, we can lean into the cold. But no, there was a wind. In fact, it keeps mentioning the word wind. It was windy. So it's not D. And then all of the above. No, that's not what we're doing there. So this answer is unequivocally C. All right? And we explored that in multiple levels. Stanza 2, it talks about the suits and dresses. So that's line number 10 here. Okay. Let me bring this slightly up so I'm making sure I'm getting all this on the screen simultaneously. Yeah, we got that. All right, let me go back to the questions. Where are the questions? There they are. So the suits and the dresses stare at the mother and the son because why? So we talked about that, but these kind of questions can get kind of deceiving. So we talked about they probably went into the office building in the first place because of the wind and the coldness. So it seems to me that they could have been shivering. So that's a legitimate answer in a way. It just doesn't seem to be a good answer, but let's look at the others. They were poorly dressed. Now, being in street clothes is not the same as poorly dressed. You could say, well, because the other people were in suits and ties and dresses and suits and all that, they were poorly dressed compared to the other people. So, all right, let's keep it in and we'll fight that out at the end. They were out of place. Yes, they were definitely out of place, right? No matter how they were dressed. They were whispering. So do you think the office people looked at the mother and the boy because they were whispering to each other? No, that's kind of the silly answer, so it's not D. What about appealing? So I mentioned that people were probably looking because maybe the kid was cute, or they were like, oh, that's kind of interesting, just a mom and a kid there. That's a nice thing to do, whatever, something. But it also just seems like that's not what's going on here, right? They're asking you, what is the essence of why they were being stared at? It wasn't because they were appealing, okay? So we're left with 3 choices, shivering, poorly dressed, or out of place. I kind of really talked about this. There's nothing in the passage telling us, even with the wind ripping through the boy's clothing and jacket and all that the boy was shivering. Obviously they were. And even at the end when the mother says, she's talking about thawing. So we can definitely conclude they were shivering. But is that why they were being stared at? No, really the reason, and it's not because they were dressed in street clothes either. It was just they were out of place. Okay? And there's an argument to say that even if they were poorly dressed, they were out of place. So B, if you will, is a sub-piece of C. All right? You could also flip that and say because they were poorly dressed, they were out of place. But the better answer is they were out of place because they were poorly dressed. Okay? And they were out of place, and this one's a little weaker, because they were shivering, right? Imagine they're walking through, oh, let's get through, or maybe they stood in the hallway for a minute just to warm up before they went back outside, all right? So B definitely gets subsumed by A. A doesn't really quite get subsumed by C, but we can give that argument there. And they were just like a novelty. They were like, you're at an office building, and all of a sudden there's a mother and a kid. So they were out of place. There's really nothing deeper there that is really being tried to ask there. So, so now it's asking about stanza number 2. Okay. So in stanza 2, the mother speaks to her son twice in order to do what? So let's try to find those 2 uses. Let's go green here. So the mother tells the kid, we saved 2 blocks. And the mother told the kid about the ropes. Okay, let's do this one better. Let's highlight it. So we have the mother saying we saved 2 blocks, and then saying people blew off the ropes. All right, so that's the 2 instances of being talked about with that. So if we come over here, let me make this red so we're doing the answer choices better. I don't know why this app is not accepting my color request. Come on. Okay, so the mother speaks to her son twice in order to what? Show off? Is she trying to press him or the people in the office building? Maybe, but I'm going to put that in parentheses. That doesn't sound like a good answer. Okay? Is she trying to frighten him? It seems to me if I was 5-year-old and I was going down this thing and I was already freezing, and my mother told me, people blow off of the stairway. I'd be like, huh? Why am I here? Right? That does sound frightening. At the same time, because I keep emphasizing she's talking to him calmly, she seems to bring him a nice homeostasis viewpoint of this kind of a thing. So I don't know that she does it. And this, so the question is, it doesn't say how does he feel. It says why does she speak that, right? So she may not have spoken to frighten him. I think she actually did it to calm him down. All right, so it's actually the opposite of that. So, but I could see B being an argument. All right, make excuses for herself. So does she realize at that point, like, why did I bring the kid out today? It's so cold, right? So that's there as well. But the thing is, the second quote where she tells him about people blowing off the stairway, that might be the justification where she's making excuses of why they're there. But the first one where she says we save time, it wouldn't work with that. So C goes out. In fact, that's the same problem with B, isn't it? All right? She can't frighten him by saying we saved 2 blocks. That's not frightening. Provide him information. Ooh, I like that one. And then comfort him. So I keep saying she's doing it to comfort him. All right? So now, just narrating what they're doing and keeping the kid informed is not strictly comforting him. So what she's doing is she's providing him information. So she's not showing off. She's just being a good mom. Again, we don't know why she brought him out in that bad weather, but she did. But otherwise, there's no indication that anything wrong is happening here. So she's just kind of narrating for him. And he seems comforted in that, or he would be freaking out. Did I cry out? He doesn't answer that, but we know the answer is no. Or he would have written he was screaming, or he was yelling, or he got mad, or he was hysterical crying. It never tells us any of that. So therefore, the answer is D. And if you could see going through these, we have to do tiebreakers and hair splitters to get the answers here. So normally we want to try to rule out at least 2 of these choices, and then be left with some, and then we have to negotiate them in our brain. And obviously the spiel on test day is most exams are going to require you to do this like in a minute and a half, which is a pain in the neck. Definitely a pain in the neck. Okay? And stanza 2, so we're still at the same paragraph here, if you will. The boy describes the river as. So we talked about that a few times where it was described as the green being monsterish, The boy personified it with the icy mouth, so it's kind of nasty, which also emphasizes the monstrousness. And be careful, little boy, kind of a thing. So, there's stuff like that. So, is it coming alive? Yes, by definition, that is what personification is doing, including the part where it's licking the sidewalk. Has it become a monster? So this one's probably weakish, but I believe it's personifying it to that level where, be careful, little boy, kind of a thing, and it was green, right? So, not terribly strong, especially the part where it says the river was slush but green, right? That is a little weakish there in terms of that, but it's there. So we have it. Threatening the bridge. So the fact that it looks up at the sidewalk and people hang on means the river is an obstacle. The river is there. So again, I don't think it's threatening the bridge drastically. But again, when it mentions looking at what we walked on, that could be the stairway as well. So is the stairway part of the bridge? We can get iffy, wishy-washy. So C is so-so, but it also does it. Talking to him, it definitely talks to him, right? And then all of the above. So this one is hard. It turns out to be all the above, right? It definitely is personified, so it's definitely coming alive. It definitely talked to him. It was definitely had this monstrous kind of nasty, trollish kind of a thing. And it definitely threatens the bridge. This one might be the hardest to really argue about. But when you think through what else was being said there, it's making the walking the bridge and getting off the bridge a dangerous process. So that's a threat. All right. So that is definitely what's going on there. Okay. And then there's one more question for this passage. The train ride. So if we scroll up to that. So the train they get to the station, and then here, right, is the train ride. It's not a lot of words. I'll put TR there. It's not a lot of words happening. Let me just make sure this is going to come across on your screens right. Yeah, it will. Okay. So the train ride is being described as. So what I like for some of these choices here is there's two possibilities. There's this A part here and B part. Whoops, wait, hold on. This is scrolling around on my screen. Let me bring it down so I can get there. There's an A part, endless, and a B part, right? Now that can go both ways. Sometimes it's easier to get an answer right by doing both kind of choices with that, and sometimes it's harder. But let's see if we can use it to tie break in any way. Endless. Is the train ride endless? So basically, we're going to get a truth table. If it's true and true, then the answer is true. If it's false and false, the answer is false. And if it's true and false, the answer is still false. Same as if it's false and true, it's still false. So was it endless? No, the kid counted the thing along the way. So that's false. It was not endless. Was it scary? So this is the part where it gets weird because it was dark. It was groaning. There was sparks. So we could argue it was scary, but it wasn't scary in the context of like it was a horror movie or something. But the train ride home was not endless. So the answer can't be A. Okay. Boring, but brief. So I don't know. Again, the kid counted at home, so it wasn't too long, I guess. Was it boring? It was jerking and stuff. Was the kid bored? I don't know if the kid was bored. We don't kind of really know that. So choice B is kind of these ones back and forth. But I think we can safely remove it because the other thing is it was exciting but short. Boring but short. I don't know. I don't think it was boring. Nothing leads us to believe there's no inferencing whatsoever that we can get out that it was a boring ride home. And a lot of kids like train rides and stuff like that too. So we can contextually do that inference and just say it's probably not B either. Between two worlds, that doesn't seem to be the right answer. It also breaks this flow where it's giving us two choices. But wait a second. There is two choices here. It's between world 1 and world 2. So what do they mean by that? Are they talking about Earth versus Mars? I don't know. So I don't really understand this question. So we're going to just put that there as a placeholder. Terrifying, but harmless. So it was harmless. They just took a normal train ride. Was it terrifying? So this gets back to the scary thing. No, again, it was a bumpy train ride in the dark. So there was nothing in there that made it terrifying. It groaned, all this other kind of stuff like that. But the groaning was different than the personification of, say, making the river monsterish. I don't think the train is being made into a villain here, whereas the river was made into a villain. So there's nothing terrifying going on. And then across the suburbs. Ooh, that's interesting because that means we're going from suburb 1 to suburb 2. But hold on. We didn't go from suburb 1. We went from the city proper to a suburb. So therefore, the answer is not E. Well, it seems like we ruled everything out. So let's go back to C because we didn't understand it. It says between two worlds. Could it be that the world of the city proper is so different than the world of the suburb that they ended up in? And the answer is yes. That's the two worlds they're talking about. So the train ride is described as going from the freezing cold city with the hustle and bustle of the city into, we're in our nice neighborhood and the snow is still untouched and it's still white. It hasn't gotten filthy from all the traffic and people and buses and all this kind of stuff like that. And that's the metaphor being used there. So then the answer to this is C. Even though it seemed like a complex answer, it makes sense when you kind of give it that extra analysis. All right, so that's the questions they're giving us here. We definitely slaughtered this poem. That's the mindset you need to be on these kind of questions. And you need to go deep, okay? You have to go deep even if it's not a poem. And we kind of covered everything. We covered a lot of the literary devices that are involved in poetry. But all these devices are also stuff you need to do with a non-poem thing. But yeah, so the figurativeness is what's going on here. So the basic spiel is that a mother and the son went into Chicago and they came home on a cold, winter, windy day. End of day, end of whatever. And we'll do the next question after this, another passage. Okay, bye. Peace out. Yo.